So, good afternoon to all, and good morning, Professor Rebecca. It's my pleasure to welcome you all for today's panel discussion. We are very fortunate to have with us eminent panelists. So I welcome Dr. G.N. Shastri, Director CSIR NIST, Professor Shiva Umapti, Director ISR Bhopal, Professor Rebecca from UK, Mr. Panelist Gupta from Tata Sons. Kamesh Gupta from Tata Sons, Rajesh from RSC India, and Mr. Swagata from IIT Kharagpur, as well as Mr. Ajit Sharma from RSC. So welcome all, and thank you for accepting our request to be present in the panel discussion today on the topic of Indian science in post-COVID period, challenges and opportunities. So on behalf of Director CSIR NIST and the entire SRTP team, I thank you all for accepting the request once again. And as you all may be knowing, this summer research training program is a June 2020 by Honorable DG CSIR to provide an opportunity to the young students who are especially this lockdown, and to do something for them. And surprisingly, over 16,000 students enrolled for this to take this opportunity and to do science while they were stuck in their home. And in this program, undergraduate, graduates, as well as MPharm students were enrolled. And one of the very important part of this program was eminent scientist lectures, as well as this kind of discussions, which we are regularly featuring. And we are really looking forward to today's discussion. And I welcome you all once again. And may I request Mr. Rajesh to moderate the session, please. Mr. Rajesh.
Thank you, Arup. At the outset, I would like to thank CSIR for giving this wonderful opportunity to really have the panel discussion, which is very pertinent right now with the current crisis we are living in. I'm Rajesh Parishwar. I work for the Royal Society of Chemistry. I look after the external relations for the society. My role is I'm responsible for advancing chemical sciences. This involves working with academia, industry, and government agencies as well. The current topic, what we are talking on the Indian science and post-COVID situation, challenges and opportunities. We are currently living in a strange and unprecedented times. And I know this is a very oft-repeated word right now. We've been listening to it. I understand that, but it is true. I think it's a very unprecedented times. This pandemic has disrupted the fundamentals of the global society. The global economy is staring at a severe hardship and a deep recession. The impact on research, education, and financial health of universities has been very, very immense. And there's a lot of uncertainty right now. Interestingly, and however, the society is looking towards science to rescue itself from this unprecedented crisis. The significance of science, research, and health have come to the forefront as never before in human history. So the current scenario is presenting itself with challenges as well as opportunities for developing scientific innovations, research, new ways of doing research, open science, and the importance of digitization. To discuss some of these aspects about science in a post-COVID situation, we have a fantastic panelists who are representing academia, who are representing industry, funding agency, who are also supporting the society, working for the society. I would like to do a little bit quick introduction of the panelists. Once again, give a little bit insight about themselves as well. Like Professor Umapati is Director of Indian Institute of Science. He was also head of inorganic and physical chemistry in IIC Bangalore. He's also a visiting faculty at NPL as well as University of Nottingham in UK. We have Professor Professor Swagata Dasgupta, who is from IIT Kanpur, who is currently Associate Dean for Continuing Education. And she's been part of teaching and research for more than 20-25 years. And she's published several in a reputed journals in the last 20 years as well. We have Kamesh Gupta, who is the Senior Vice President from Group Innovation Technology Office at DataSense. He is responsible for building strategic collaborations between academia and industry. We also have Rebecca Fairbairn, Head of UK Research and Innovation Office in India. And she has spent considerable time in India for a long time, and she knows Indian research community very well. And she has also helped build several research collaborations in India, and she's a good person to really share her views on the international between India and UK as well. We have Dr. Shastri, who is a director of NIST. He's a computational chemist, and he has worked on several important projects like open source drug discovery. And also he and his team are currently leading on this innovative summer training program, which has got immense pull from the Indian community. I just heard from Dr. Shastri, there have been more than 1 million views for the videos and lectures which have been conducted on this program. I think they have done a fantastic job in putting the summer training program in a quick time of only 2 weeks. And finally, we have Ajit Sharma, who is our country manager for Royal Society of Chemistry. He has spent a lot of time in scientific publishing industry. He has worked with leading journals, leading publishing companies in India. Before we get into the panel discussion, I would like to just give a couple of house rules saying that most of the audience members we will not be taking questions. We will be only taking, you can only send your questions or observations to the panelists on the chat mode, and I would relate that messages to the panelists. Finally, and I would also suggest panelists can also intervene, and if they have to raise a point, they can also raise their hands. I would allow them to speak as well on any points going forward. Let's begin the conversation right now on the interesting topic of Indian science in the post-COVID scenario. I would like to ask each panelist based on your work, based on your experience as a role, what are the major challenges and what are the emerging trends post this scenario? I would like to ask Dr. Umapati to share his views first.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation to be part of this panel discussion. If you look at the challenges right now, which is probably the most obvious, is the young students who are, very vibrant, who have been very active physically and mentally during the academic periods, are all stuck in their rooms, in their houses, leading to considerable, not only mental stress, but also physical fatigue and also anxiety. And this is something that we are very sensitive about, and we are trying to help them by various ways, including arranging lectures in addition to conducting classroom teaching through online portal. The other thing that has also happened, what Rajesh mentioned earlier, is about financial strain that has happened because of non-salaried class people having lost their jobs or reduced the amount of income that they received, has also made a big challenge in terms of how to handle the environment of having stuck at home, plus study, plus also having to purchase internet packages, working with other people, not being able to communicate with their friends or spend time with them, even to study together. So this is the biggest challenge in terms of education I'm talking about. And of course, there is other economic challenges and other challenges, hospital challenges, which we are watching on the news every day. If you look at the opportunities, I think this has made, in fact, actually forced all of us to come up with innovative approaches to dealing with the environment. I must congratulate all the students and everyone who were part of this activity in the last 4 or 5 months for the successfully handling it so far and survived the system both mentally and physically, because I know from my own colleagues how they managed it here. So one biggest takeoff from here is a quick learning, even for young people, is to say, how do I manage stress? So this 3 weeks, these 3 months, 4 months have taught them to handle emotional stress and mental stress. I would think it's an opportunity for them to grow better in their future and deal with it. And another thing that has happened is some faculties or teachers who have not been very comfortable about accessing internet and teaching on the internet have learned the technology is better now. And therefore, online teaching methods or online interactions have become very positive. Larger number of people are interacting. And the funny side to the whole thing and also beneficial is that as myself, many committee meetings, we have stopped traveling, so the government saves a lot of money. And so there is a benefit to everybody in terms of financial gain. But of course, the one more thing is that unlike in a regular meeting, in these online meeting, the decisions are made much faster than what we normally do in a room meeting. So I think it's an opportunity which has taught all of us about conducting meetings in a different way. And as I said, young people have suddenly grown, in terms of their maturity because of the way they handle the whole situation. And this has made enormous impact. The kids have actually learned to take care of their families. And also all of us have been forced to take care of work from home at the same time, the family in the same room or the same building, which has also taught us a lot in terms of social impact, social relevance. I think I'll stop here on the challenges and opportunities. The other topics, when it comes, I'll give you my views on the others. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Umapati. Professor Swagata, I think you have been a researcher as well, I think, and a teacher as well. What do you think, what are the challenges, what you're facing, and how would you evolve? And what are the emerging trends which are appearing, larger trends as well?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to be part of this panel discussion. Well, as Professor Umapati pointed out, the most affected sector, I believe, has been education, spanning a large population ranging from school-going children to researchers, educators in their advanced or early stages of their career. And the forceful closure of educational institutions, research centers, and laboratories. What has happened is the online teaching measures that have, as emergency measures that had to be taken, could not be a substitute for teacher-student interaction at all, which obviously, though we have learned a lot, we miss those interactions with the students and the faculty and students across disciplines, which I think is a prerequisite if we really want to develop a thinking, educated mind. And another thing that we have seen is the mushrooming of these online classes and courses. There have been many such courses, and while it has been alluring, say, to the administrators, because you do not have to think of issues like infrastructure, there is no limit on the enrollment. So these things, I feel, is a dangerous trend that may be justified under the current circumstances, but I guess post-COVID, this has to be, we do not want to short circuit education in any way. As for research, what has happened is with the closure of the laboratories, there have been, with scientific events cancelled, even though we do have these virtual meetings online, the obstruction in science communication obviously has led to a delay in scientific research and innovation. But the COVID focus should, I feel, not mask other areas. I use the word mask in a very specific way, because what we are seeing now is the outcome of this. The outcome here has become more important than the understanding. It's a sudden surge of instant results. Research related to COVID seems to be at the forefront now. There are many other issues that also mankind faces, which has taken a back burner or a back seat right now. research on energy, climate, these cannot be neglected related to COVID. COVID, if we look at it in the long run, though it will be short-lived if you look at it in the real span of time, I feel. Another thing is the surge of articles related to COVID. If you look at journal articles now, the peer review process, I was just looking at some journals, has gone from say 120 days down to 66 days. Half the time you require, and the COVID situation has taken this platform up to a level where some of this is dangerous because you have these these articles are not always peer reviewed. So you have this opportunity where you can just upload an article. I'm not saying there's research that has not been done, but again, taking this, it's kind of like scientific research has come into like a package and integrating like with a package. So it depends on how you present it. Okay. So the scientists here have a very important duty where you have to distinguish between true science and the partial truths. This, I feel, is extremely important, and proper communication is required to convey this truth. We are not dealing with only people who have access to journals or have access to scientific communication. There are the large masses of people. I'll just give you one very simple example. There was this cartoon that came up that just showed the importance of wearing a mask. There were two people standing, none of them wearing masks, talking, and there was a spray in front of each of their mouths. The next cartoon showed one person wearing the mask and the other person talking without a mask, so the spray came out only of this person. And the third panel showed both people wearing masks, and the spray obviously is much less. So this pictorial representation means and says a lot when we're talking to a community. As scientific educators, I think it is the educational program, the general awareness is at a much younger level. I guess I'll stop here, and then as and how the discussion progresses, I'll add my views. Thank you.
Thank you, Swagata. I think you have raised a couple of important points. I think in terms of digital versus the physical kind of classes, as well as the we are more excessively focused on COVID research rather than the others. We are taking a backseat. I think these are the points we will discuss later on during the panel discussion, but I think very well said some of those points. Now we'll ask Kamesh, he comes from an industry background. What are your challenges? Because you've been involved in this industry academia partnerships as well. What have you seen in terms of current challenges as well? How do you see it evolve and the emerging trends?
So thank you, Rajesh. It's fantastic to be on this panel with elite members around the table. And also let me wish all the people who have logged in for this panel discussion being healthy and staying safe. Rajesh, I know it's you mentioned this, that unprecedented crisis is an oft-repeat word. But to my mind, as a first principle to deal with crisis is to acknowledge and face reality. So I'm going to do that starting and acknowledging the crisis. And I think it's very fair to say this 2020 has seen an unprecedented time that no government or business had anticipated or even were adequately prepared for. I'm sure none of this was in anybody's business risk register, which we happily run in our businesses either. And as a result, organizations across are facing a huge collective challenge in ensuring the health and safety of their people across nation and community. The need for innovative thinking and new technology solutions has never been so critical for humanity and business than it is today. So while people health and safety burden is on stakeholders across public sector, private sector, life sciences, healthcare industry, where it is key, the economic sustenance and business continuity is also very critical. And I think we are at an inflection point in the way of healthcare would be delivered during this global crisis. It's a paradigm shift for research and innovation, a topic of interest today for us. It's evident life sciences companies are accelerating research and bringing drugs to market much quicker. Larger healthcare ecosystem are rapidly developing new techniques to improve the accessibility and quality of care. We all agree today, I think adoption of teleconsult and video diagnostic is an accepted norm now. As a business, I think in select sector, we are seeing demand disruptions. For example, real estate, transportation, there is a slowdown. But in some cases, there is a demand destruction where we are talking about restaurants, airlines, hotel, how they're going to serve, what kind of people will walk in, whether they will ever have that demand coming back. Is actually a challenge which we need to collectively address. Lastly, I believe it's time for teams across sectors and individuals to work together collaboratively for developing solutions and approaches to this crisis, and ultimately provide a safer, more resilient environment for all of us. Having acknowledged, I think, let me touch on your specific question on the challenges. What I personally feel for businesses, in past, a very typical business cycle for any business used to be get into business, put some team together, get into a sustenance mode. Once you sustain, get into growth mode, and then aspire for leadership position. Now, this cycle has an added dimension of survival. So it's survival, sustenance, growth, and leadership. Challenges for business today is on strategies and action around safety and survival first. Safety of humankind, safety of the people, employees, and survival of business then. Then comes sustenance, and I think we are lucky that select few are looking for growth, and that is primarily in the essential commodity space. Strategy and actions are around rebuilding the business ecosystem, which has been disrupted by this crisis. The intensity or form or difficulty may be varying depending on whether you're a small enterprise, medium or large scale business, or which stage of life cycle of business you are in. But I think the challenges remain same for us. Responsibility is greater on shoulders of larger business, need to be anchor in this crisis. However, I strongly think underpinning all the priorities for business will be employee safety. How do you ensure their safety? How do you ensure their well-being? How do you remain connected on real-time basis is going to be a bigger challenge for business to For people and employee, I think the biggest challenge for people is their health and safety. How do they survive in this pandemic and stay safe, not get trapped by the virus and have to go through the medical circuit? For employees, it is assurance from employer, looking at what this employer is going to do for me, how they are going to sustain me, what support system would be provided for. So in this case, communication is very critical between the employee and employer as we move forward. As far as government is concerned, I think challenge is immense. Tata companies, be it TCS, Tata Steel, Tata Motors, Chemical, Power, Airline Company, Vistara, Indian Hotels, and many more group companies who are group flag bearers are braving this crisis for us in true sense. All are engaged in providing support to people, communities around, and keeping the economic clock ticking with decisive and judicious leadership. We are lucky, true to our legacy, Mr. Ratan Tata and our group chairman, Mr. Chandra, have committed for COVID relief efforts led by a very senior colleague, Panmali, in support of serving the community and nation. In a small way, complementing to large-scale government efforts to fight this crisis on all fronts. I'm privileged to be part of this group today. My senior colleagues who are at forefront of business and relief work have positive feedback about government's action in dealing this pandemic. Government is doing some phenomenal job, have responded to the needs, and are in a listen and learn mode to bring about necessary changes in agile and responsive way. It's so very critical that the ecosystem and infrastructure around us, on which we all bank as business people, is supportive at this point of time. I think, in my opinion, health and safety of citizens and economic stability will remain key challenge and focus for government in coming months and years. I can pause here and talk about the trends and in the science.
Yeah, I think you can talk about the trends as well, I think.
Okay, so this is a pretty positive and exciting area for me. I see a lot of positive signs. This pandemic is leaving on table. A lot is changing, and I think we will change in near future. One change which we are already living every day and have adopted very well to is virtual. Virtual is the new normal. Working from home, transaction over Zoom calls, and the biggest of all, learning and events like this, what we're doing today is virtual now, which is all socially very acceptable, and it's a norm now. The new trends we will watch out for is the new normal, and many new future innovations will come from home offices with people working out of home. I feel unprecedented time also gives us opportunity to think out of the box and innovate to solve many of the challenges which we are facing as company, as community, as country. The very concept of paradigm shift, a functional change in the basic concept and experimental practices of scientific discipline, as it was enunciated way back in 1960, holds true in this pandemic too, which is resulting in paradigm shift all across. If you have to relate to a few of the crises in the past and the way they have helped shape the modern way of business, it's great learning to see Great Depression of 1929 resulted in expansion of labor unions, welfare states. Japan became the second largest economy of the world after being devastated in World War II. The energy crisis in 1973 resulted in much needed focus on alternate energy. Likewise, I think the current crisis is also resulting in paradigm shift in many industries, and we shall emerge into a more resilient future. I think one of the panelists did mention about drug discovery. Let me take an example. Today, the developmental pharmaceutical and biotech companies are under tremendous pressure to develop new drugs and vaccines for COVID in months. Traditionally, it used to take years and years to develop the vaccine. People tell me, I think penicillin was discovered and the final drug came out. It was a gap of 10 to 15 years. Here we're talking about medicine for COVID or vaccine for COVID in a month's time. Clinical trials are also becoming decentralized because of limited mobility and social distancing. And the trend for leveraging a collaborative might is going to be a new trend. I also feel it's impossible to meet the timeline of drug development in months unless you deploy new and innovative strategies across the entire drug delivery and discovery development value chain, which includes using the new trends, new tools of AI and deep learning as we do this. Entire care delivery system is undergoing redesign and dependency on technology like telehealth to meet expectation of doctors and patients with remote diagnostic is going to be the next emerging trend maturing in very short time. There is a lot of transformation in remote and digital diagnostic, care for employee, manufacturing operation, asset management in plants, all around the environment. A lot of changes are happening. Sectors are also gearing up for resilient remote operation using artificial intelligence and automation. Back to the healthcare, I think the elderly healthcare is becoming again a unique challenge, which probably will be attempted by attaching a smartphone, senior citizen getting monitored in the new model, sitting at home. I believe governments are taking keen interest in industry, academia, government partnership, develop and deploy these systems purely from an agility standpoint. In manufacturing, adaptive and automated manufacturing is providing resilience to operation, changes in product system, variable supply chain is working integrated ways. I think there is a rebalance between resilience and efficiency as we speak. I'm sure Rajesh, you will agree that there will be many more opportunities and paradigm shifts coming days as all witness in support of economic resilience. I'd like to close by saying I think it is worth recognizing the world will be like. It will be virtual and probably digitally enabled. How best to manage ourselves within that would be a matter of choice. Managing continuity with discontinuity is going to be the mantra. Managing closeness with social distancing and balancing resilience with efficiency is going to be the order of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamesh. Thank you for giving a good perspective from the industry, how it's looking at. I completely agree with you. I think there is human safety is becoming a paramount, as well as we need to look at how we have that resilience to for this entire scenario as well. Thanks from the industry perspective. Now I would like to ask Rebecca, I think, who is managing a funding agency in India and other things, what are her views in terms of how it will impact the funding, in terms of what are the challenges for her going forward, and what are the emerging trends from a funding agency perspective?
Thank you, Rajesh. To be honest, it's going to be quite difficult to follow the earlier panelists. I think they've said most of the important and exciting things that I'd had to say already. I'll do my best though. So, Rajesh, as you've introduced me, I'm Rebecca Fairbairn. I'm Director of UK Research and Innovation in India. So UK Research and Innovation is the UK's major public sector funder of research and innovation. We fund, that's our role, but we're also charged with steering the development of the UK's research and innovation community, and also for being the voice of that community more coherently. While we're UK focused, we inherently believe that ideas and indeed the ways to solve any international challenge are really best focused and addressed through multiple lenses. And that really does involve international working. We need to be able to work well and internationally, and UKRI generally supports a great deal of international work and has 4 international offices to help with this, one of which is in New Delhi. So I'm going to talk about COVID-19 challenges and opportunities from the perspective of a research and innovation policy and funding agency. I will focus these on global issues, but my examples will be specific to UKRI. Having heard what everyone else has said already, I think we're all learning very similar things, so I think there'll be opportunity to connect between each of these points. So the challenge for UKRI, as for everybody, I think, was that our operational context changed almost overnight back in March. And that has meant we've had to completely reset our thinking on what needs to be done and how we should do it. And I think from my perspective, this has provided us with a huge range of opportunities, which in turn have led to some new challenges. So our work really is built on partnership. UKRI India is here to build and maintain and develop relationships with the Indian funding system to make sure that we are working together well as 2 partner countries. Now, ordinarily, when there's a major shift in context, when something big happens, the first thing we do is go and speak to our partners, spend some time talking about plans, thinking through what we might do next, talking about discussing the implications of that. And obviously, we just couldn't do that. There was operational issues to cover in terms of those of us looking after staff, but also we physically couldn't go and see each other. So we've not met our partners here for 5 months now. In fact, as a team, we've not seen each other for 5 months, not really. And this has provided a forced opportunity to test different ways of working. And I think that's a theme that's come up from everyone's introductory talk so far. We're being forced to test things differently. It's creating a new normal, and that seems to be working actually quite well. Certainly much better than we thought it would work. So we are remaining in touch. We're holding online meetings. We're having events like the one this afternoon where we're talking together from places all over India, not just meeting in one room with all of the associated travel. I think that makes us much more able to deal with equality and diversity issues. No one has to worry about caring responsibilities when we're working from our local office or from our dining room. And I do think that's very positive, but that said, I don't think it's necessarily a long-term solution. I do think relationships really do rely on those water cooler moments that we hear spoken of. We need to be able to make eye contact with each other, to be able to properly read each other's body language, and to build relationships that are based on something that's much more human than the scripted meetings that we have, the tight work agendas that we have for our Zoom marathons these days. So I think that presents itself with a bit more of a challenge. We can see what we can do from this forced opportunity completely differently, but there's a new challenge in how we maintain and sustain that over the longer term. Our need to refocus our investment in research and innovation also happened almost overnight. So everything from therapeutics to ventilators to vaccinations, supply chains, economic modelling based on different forms of lockdown, epidemiology, clinical management, mental health, everything in between suddenly became much more, immediately urgent than the things we have been working on. And I think this picks up on points earlier around the importance of other sciences, so climate change being pushed into the background. Challenge for UKRI because we're only 2 years old as an organisation, and we were developed to bring together 9 different funders. So this has meant that we've had to test the foundations of our creation. We've had to work across disciplines, across policy areas, with research and with innovation funding to try and create something that is properly connected, that will provide a response to this real global challenge. We've also had to move far more quickly than we would usually have worked. I think I absolutely agree with the disbenefits of that fast working, where there are things that we lose. But I think there's also some positives there. We have been speaking in UKRI for a very long time about ways that we could innovate and do things differently. And this forced opportunity has made us have to immediately test them. I don't know how long we'd have put off that testing if we hadn't had this opportunity now. We have been able to find £180 million of cash to spend on COVID-related research in the UK, and we've also found an additional 80 million to support the sector more generally. And these were points that again have been raised already. People are working differently, organisations are surviving or not in different ways, and our role has meant that we have to try and look after that in a different way. Again, this has provided great new opportunities for innovation and especially interdisciplinary working. But I do anticipate a future challenge will be around our returning focus to what was business as usual. So supporting the health of disciplines, for example, it's important that we continue to do that. We need to ensure that we continue to focus on COVID-19 because I don't think this will be a 2020 problem. I think it will last a bit longer. But we absolutely have to balance that with the need to fund in an ongoing way other global challenges. And of course, this then links us back to international work more broadly. So the challenge that I think is experienced by all funders of research and innovation all over the world is slightly different. We are related to where we're based, to our own national context and to the decisions made by our own national governments. I think most countries began their research and innovation focus really pinpointing in on national needs and priorities. But now it feels we've turned the corner a little and we're working through international organisations to connect up findings, approaches, to spot gaps properly and to work with bilateral partners again. This has meant new opportunities. We are looking at different areas of research that we hadn't been looking at back in February, and to think differently about how research can be done, especially if we're not going to see each other. For me, I think that's the major challenge we need to focus on for the future though. It is far easier to build a successful application and to deliver a project well with people that you know, that you've met a lot of times and that you trust and you have a strong relationship with. But we need to find a way now to nurture new international partnerships so that we can continue to further global knowledge generally, but also specifically on COVID-19 and indeed to the next crisis, because this isn't going to be the last or the only one. So we need to find a way now, especially as we've talked about these exciting young scholars stuck at home. How can we work with them to build the partnerships they need for their careers that will enhance the knowledge that we need globally for the future?
Thank you for your insight. I think it was nice to know in terms of how the funding agencies have also had a lot of challenges and kind of turned around it to make it into an opportunity as well. I will have a couple of questions, but I think I will wait for everybody to share their views as well on that. I'd like to talk to Dr. Shastri, and because he's been responsible, I think he's organized a big program like summer training program in this crisis as well. As a head of the institution, as well as a head of a research laboratory, what do you think have been a major challenges for you to deliver research or deliver programs, as well as what are the new opportunities you have come across, or what are the new trends you're looking at?
Thank you very much for us to discuss on various issues. I feel that this COVID is a great equalizer. It has stuck the haves and have-nots the powerful countries or not so powerful countries in ways which are very, very similar. And probably some countries which are less equipped dealt with it much better than the countries which are better equipped. It was a jolt and still is very ambiguous. And it's very important to see how each nation would like to deal with it. And as our panel is more on Indian science in post-COVID period, challenges and opportunities. First of all, the scientists have become very central in society. COVID has brought forth this scientific spirit, and general public are looking at scientists to deliver something. This is the positive side. And science itself, which about a century or two back was geared to solve problems. But over the next few decades, there are scientometric indices and different branches of science like chemistry, physics, biology, zoology, engineering, medicine, and then in chemistry you have inorganic chemistry, organic, physical chemistry, or chemistry, computational chemistry. Then people have different professions or careers which build upon it, and often they go into their own silos and try to look at this as a career, just like an agricultural person or a businessman will have their targets. A scientist will also have a target that he has to produce a few publications or a patent, or they have to have some scientific target which will be important to realize that they are scientists. So in this process, people have become very good in doing correct. What I mean to say is the rigor with which a particular thing has to be done was mastered. And the whole quest is to do a thing correctly, but not as much as in concentrating on doing correct things. Doing correct things are much more important. You have to have your priorities and you need to know what are the long-term goals. For example, in the panel, it was already discussed about drug discovery. Drug discovery is a 15-year-old, or if somebody is looking at a material genome or whatever it is. And there is a drug discovery phase and a development phase. Discovery phase will take 4 or 5 years. And then one has to very slowly build upon this, and then another followed by a development phase of another 8 to 9 years. It may cost about long-term project which has a huge impact on the society require a plan, and a large number of people have to come together to deliver. However, in the last several decades, before this jolt hit humanity, are going in different ways. And for good or for bad, now we have to come and then look at how do we do science? Do we have a scientific spirit? And there are many and there are many theories which people try to propagate, and then a large number of scientific research is aimed at something, and many papers are not even cited and people are not bothered about it. When it comes to a country like India, we are probably third most in terms of our number of publications, and a large country, but maybe this is an opportunity for us to see how do we do science in a proper way. And I would like to be a little bit more India specific. A country of 1.3 billion people should be able to have their own electronic industry in a better way. And we are the generic capital. But what is happening to the supply chain? As we already have discussed with Kamesh Gupta, the supply chain we did not plan properly. And the dependence on APIs on China is at a level which is very, very undesirable. And in the education system also, we have some challenges, and these challenges have to be met. We have challenges in terms of a linguistic dependence. A country with 14, 15 different languages, none of us are as comfortable. I can't think in English. It's a foreign language for me. We are linguistically bankrupt as a country of 1.3 billion people. And a country where mathematics is really taken very seriously, we are not able to get pure mathematicians. A country which has a huge diversity in terms of biology, bioprospecting, and in knowledge, we are not able to harness this knowledge. I would say that this, in terms of science, it is a juxtaposition of 5,000 years of wisdom and 100 years of science. 5,000 years of wisdom tell us how to lead our life in terms of this immunomodulation, protectivity, in terms of a holistic treatment of the health in much better ways than this 100 years of science, which are more often filled with a lot of theories. Actually, one very interesting book I come across, This Idea Must Die, which has demonstrated that human progress is much more limited by the so-called theories, which are not able to facilitate the progress. They are actually blocked. We have theories, especially in health, a large number of theories are there. And it is very important for us to devise way of looking at is very important. Scientific temper is very important. Reproducibility is very important. And we need to really blend this 5,000 years of wisdom and 100 years of science rather than taking sides. Probably some countries, I feel that China is doing much better by very effectively integrating Chinese traditional medicine and the modern medicine. You have to learn. There are challenges in research. There are challenges in industry. There are challenges in agriculture. And bigger challenges are there that people are going from cities to villages. Is it a good thing? I think ruralization is always better. It decongests the cities and a lot of things with huge number of conferences, funding, everything, we are not able to decrease the carbon footprint. Corona could do it. And as Dr. Umapati is mentioning, lot of travel. If I wanted to go from Jorhat to Hyderabad, New Delhi for 1 hour meeting, I have to spend 3 days. Now in 1 day, I can attend 5 different meetings. But people are also getting fatigued with this particular technology. And there is always craziness all around. Technologies are there, but we have to ask questions. The new education policy has come in India. That there are very good points, but we also have to ask questions and then people have to come openly. Is it correct to bombard an 8-year-old with online questions? This is something funny. Every 6-year, 7-year, 8-year-old, all the parents are busy in logging into the Zoom lectures or other lectures that people are giving for 2nd class, 3rd class, and 4th class. So we are more materialistic way of- and probably lost the fun of enjoying. Probably due to Corona, if you are happily locked with your family, maybe many people are spending time with their wife and children or parents. This is something good. And many of us who travel, because last year I was traveling 20 days per month. And most of the times, my friends will know that if you want to go to a place, you have to get up because flights are at 6 o'clock. You have to get up at 3 o'clock. Or then the meeting will be there 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and you reach late night. You attend 3 hour or 2 hour meeting. There are some advantages. So I just wanted to tell you that there are quite a few challenges that are there, but for a country like India, I feel we have a right platform to think about it. And now the cases are increasing. Unfortunately, we are leading the world with close to 65,000 cases per day and about 1,000 deaths. And we have to come together and then try to solve the bigger problems related to COVID and COVID related things, and how chemistry can do it can be much more specific thing. There's a lot of role that chemistry and in particular and science level can do. And I think that
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Shastri. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm audible? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your sharing your thoughts. I agree with you. I think we have to do it right. I think that's the way we need to. We need not take any shortcuts because of this whole this one. I think we need to really work on a proper platform as well. Finally, I would like to ask Ajit again. He's been part of our roles at chemistry. He's my been colleague as well as from a scientific being from a scientific organization and a knowledge organization. What do you see as the major challenges what we are coming across, as well as what are the emerging trends in scientific publishing?
Thank you, Rajesh. So, Professor Umapati, Professor Saugata, Professor Sastry, Rebecca, my dear friend, everyone, all of you have raised some very, very valid points and very interesting perspectives on the current situation. And I just wanted to start with a quote, because as I was listening to you, because we were looking at solutions, we were looking at challenges. There's a gentleman called Dr. Steve Marpoli. He's a very renowned author and a inspirational coach. He says that sometimes problems do not require a solution to solve them. Instead, they require a maturity to outgrow them. So COVID is one such solution where I think there's a lot of effort. So there's one specific set of community which is trying to solve the problem, but us in general, people who are not directly, associated with solving the problem, we should try and find out a method. Now, everything relevant to the situation and the possible solutions has already been discussed, but I just want to bring forward to the table a small, humble suggestion from the publishing and information management side. Is that COVID is a problem which is going to stay for a long time. But this current situation has also accelerated our use of digital technology, and this is really transforming our education system for the better. So all these things that we were assuming that is not possible are now becoming possible. And I tried to have a small conversation with Dr. Shastri in the beginning of our session, because there is a thought which was running behind in my head. And that thought was that because the information and consumption is going digital, probably now we should look at the usage of artificial intelligence and machine learning into how students are, consuming the content. Because in a televised or a Zoom or a Microsoft team meeting, it's very difficult for a teacher to assess what's going on, whether I'm scratching my head because I would very comfortably switch off the camera, say low bandwidth. So what am I doing? Whether am I doing this, the understanding what the faculty is telling me? Am I really focusing? Am I just texting to my girlfriend while I'm talking to the faculty? So these things, and there is a very limited scope of, actually deploying an assessment. If we, in some way, as a community which is leading the education in chemistry and allied sciences in India, we try and find out if we can use big data tools which can have a big role in development of a technology driven era of this higher education, where we can change the focus from transmissive information to adaptive learning, where I have to follow certain rules, and my behavior online and my behavior on the response patterns can very well be assessed, analyzed, and predicted. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Where I need to invest more time? What are the areas that we, see as the growth areas? So it's the similar things that a real faculty. So like Professor Sastry, if he's teaching me and I'm sitting face to face with him, then he would probably do these things by himself. He would tell me that, Ajit, your, assessment technique is very weak. You must work on your physical, all those aspects. So if we can think of a model where the content goes modular, and each of these modular contents, they are mapped with an algorithm, fed in an intelligent system driven by a central university, and information conveyed to each one of them. It's a very long shot, yes, ma'am, please.
No, you go ahead. I'll just have some comments after you're done.
Yeah. So these kind of things might help us in improving the situation a little bit. But this is not the long-term solution. This is the model of blended learning, because this will help the the faculties and the education experts to deliver the information and manage the situation remotely. But at the very same time, the closer connect of, and we are from India, Rebecca, just for your information, there is a concept called Guru Shishya Parampara, which is actually the role of a faculty in the lives of a student. Till today, 25 years I've spent now in working. If I see my teacher, there is no way on earth that I can ignore. I have to go there and convey my greetings, because that's a very, very strong cultural tradition that we have with us. Because the guru or the teacher has invested a lot of personal energies, and I think that is where I want to bring in the convergence of human touch back into the education, irrespective of what the challenges are, and bring the association of the face-to-face conversation into the thing. Now, what can we do as publisher? I think as publisher, as the society, we can work with the eminent personalities such as this panel, and work with them to identify what is the right, because there is no right or wrong solution here. We have to identify an optimal path, which is a balance of digital and the real life coaching, so that we can produce the future generations which are much more sensible, healthy, and emotionally balanced people. I would rest because in the interest of time and the questions, I will stop my suggestions here and pass it on to ma'am. She wanted to ask a question.
No, I just wanted to make a comment here. Rajesh, can I go ahead?
Yeah, please.
No, I guess rethinking or revisiting innovative pedagogical measures is extremely necessary under the current circumstances. But when we're considering a chemistry education, not burning your fingers and not smelling ammonia is something that you just cannot do online. So that feeling of working in the laboratory. So even with the post-COVID situation, the way we were thinking of it is, if we could bring like sections of students, I do not know how, we have to think of a model, how we can bring sections of students into the laboratory, maintaining the physical distancing, as we call it, and then working in a situation, working about trying of finding a way about it. Because if you're going to develop a drug, however much you do AI or deep learning or find a molecule, unless you have the synthetic methodology, the synthetic background to develop this in the lab, you can go to umpteen docking methods, umpteen AI methods that will tell you, okay, this is the molecule that's going to work wonderfully.
Yep.
Then how do you make this molecule? You need that training that you cannot do without a laboratory.
I do agree. 1 minute. I do agree with you, Swagat. I think I completely agree. There has to be a blended learning. I think you have to have that physical. I think that's where a lot of people are talking about in this discussion as well. I think digital is an enabler, not an end by itself.
Exactly.
One of the things I wanted to ask Umapati as well as Rebecca, I think you raised a very important pertinent point was mask. Because of excessive focus on COVID research right now, I think the other sectors are being masked or we are taking a back. From Rebecca, from a funding agency, how do you see that? I think when do you see that? Also, Professor Umapati, I think there's one of the things is you have a large team which doing a research as well. How do you really motivate or how do you really bring back that focus? There is a equal that other global challenges don't take a backseat.
Rebecca?
Okay. Thanks, Rajesh. That's a difficult question, as ever. So, yeah, we have been able to work together to deprioritize some activities to find money for the urgent needs of COVID research. And I think that's really important, and I'm glad we've done it. But as we've discussed, various panel members, myself, and your question indicates, we cannot continue to work in that unusual way. So what we're doing is starting to build terms like resilience. That's been mentioned already as well. How can we develop more resilient systems for our universities, for our labs, and for the way we live, for our cities, for businesses in terms of how they think about their employment and the way that people work, the way people commute. And I think a lot of the research that we are funding under the umbrella of COVID will help that broader future-looking work as well. So materials science, for example, looking at which materials best, which in our case is worse, allow bacteria and viruses to survive on their surface. Which materials should we be using for face masks, and do face masks really work, and in which situations? Talking about things like temperature controls for offices and businesses, or air circulation flows for transport. These are all really important, and actually they do relate to climate change too. We over air condition or overheat our properties. How can we be looking differently so that we're balancing resilience in terms of virus as well as resilience in terms of energy use, and making sure we're working in a much more closed loop in terms of sustainability and what we need, better capturing the outputs that appear from one process to be unnecessary but actually are needed for others. And I think that point around it's not just pedagogy we need to look at. How do you really inspire students and enable them to learn properly through lab-based science? I do hope that COVID and the crisis and this crazy last few months that we've been through will help inspire some students to look to science, not just in relation to medical science or virology or epidemiology, but much more broadly. And as we've discussed, one of the benefits of this crisis has been the pushing of science to the forefront of people's imaginations. Now, that's not always been in a good way, and I see many governments saying that they are science-led, but not necessarily following science properly. But I think now is the time that we need to be standing up and making the point that science doesn't necessarily have the answers, but politicians make political decisions. Science is about finding as near to the truth as we can with the time and information we have available.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay, so I think I look at this as in a very more, should I say, more positive than a long-term issue. I think this COVID issue is probably has a lifetime of another 3 to 4 months. So that is the attitude we have taken in our institute with our colleagues. The point is that it is inevitable that when disasters happen, we have to manage them and not to lose the long-term impact on our students and on our output in terms of faculty's research, and also in terms of quality is being maintained in spite of lack of access to engineers or facilities that are being present. So we have prioritized in such a way that we had to innovatively prioritize our research programs. Since the manpower is very less because they are all stuck in various places, and plus also, you know, getting something that you want to buy, a chemical or an instrument for your research, is not easily accessible so fast. Therefore, people have to be sensitized to the fact that this is not a disaster. You know, it is a once in 100-year event. It just so happens that you and I are present when this is happening. And let us just ride it over a period of next few weeks or few months. So one of the things, I think Swagata made the point about laboratory. And actually that has come to one of the things that we are in discussion is about, you know, people are actually playing 3D virtual games with virtual goggles. And flight simulators, you know, pilots are I have gone one of those flight simulators myself, where the pilots sit in a room, think that actually they are actually flying an aircraft while they're actually sitting in a small room, which is available in Delhi airport. If you go, you will see. So when they can do that, I think that when you're trying to train students in extremely high tech, for example, fMRI, right, functional MRI machine, it's not something everybody can afford it. I mean, let's just face the reality. And one of the things that I've been telling my colleagues is that can we develop a 3D virtual laboratory, which is probably going to add value to education, not necessarily because of COVID, but because it's also a compensation for institutions which are poor around the world, not only in India. And similarly, for example, I have told my PhD students, they're all stuck at home. They keep calling me saying, you know, we have a meeting every week. But sometimes, of course, they get very depressed or distracted, and they're worried about their degrees, you know, how long it's going to take. So I always tell them, don't worry, use the opportunity. So you wouldn't believe one of my students have passed a data analytics course in the last 3 months. And she even managed to get a Python degree certificate. And I said, look, because we are employing artificial intelligence in our day-to-day research, I said, there are so many courses available. Coursera opened it as free for many people for 3-4 months. Similarly, NPTEL courses are there, SWAM courses are there. So we tell them, don't worry, it is a temporary issue. And in a few months, we will sort it out. But what can a government or a society like Royal Society of Chemistry can do to the society of the students? I think that our role now, because the teaching right now is going on and the students are seriously involved in taking classes, we have to keep their motivations up. I think what Rebecca also mentioned is, you know, the psychological support that we can provide to them to keep themselves mentally active. One way to do it is that I was suggesting is to have some sort of an interaction with well-known successful scientists around the world and have a casual conversation, because their whole day they're listening to intense science or intense engineering or intense mathematics. So what you do, you just say, what was the life of somebody, you know, who is very famous is like? What does he do in the morning? How did he end up doing research in that area? How did he feel when he was told he was a Nobel laureate? You know, simple things. The kids will and the parents will love to listen to this and distract them from their day-to-day pressures and stresses. I think that's a major thing I wanted to say. In terms of funding, which I think we are all, for next 6 months for sure, funding is going to be cut because there's enormous resources needed to take care of the country, which we have invested and we are still running. And therefore, I think by until middle of next year, we will have I do not see the economy going so badly in a way. I think that it will recover, but it will probably recover in 6 months or so, because our Indian economy luckily heavily disconnected with respect to the world because our currency is still not convertible. And the second thing is our cyclic economy of consumer industry itself within the country is sufficient to accelerate the economic activity, I feel. So this is my broad comments.
Thanks. Thank you. I think Shastri wanted to say something. Dr. Shastri?
I just to say 2 points. In the last 4 months, CSIR NIST, we have no experience with any biotech. Not do anything, but in 4 months, we have invested about 10.5 crores. That is close to $1.5 million, and constructed a COVID testing lab from the scratch and had 10 BSL-2 cabinets and 7 RT-PCR machines, which were brought along with centrifuges, and MD microbiologist was given by the state, and our scientists were using this RT-PCR for plant genomics and other things. So we have now tested 18,000 samples, 18,300 till today, and we also have started this antibodies test. So all of this was possible because there was a will to do it, and we recruited around 30 people to work in this lab. All of this was possible, and if you look at this channel, whatever that we are talking is available in CSIR SRTP channel, where we so far had about 40 YouTube videos which describe the functioning of a large number of instruments, like NMR. How does it work? Going just like Dr. Umapati talking about the virtual reality, this is already there, flow cytometer, fluorescence spectrometer. And NMR has a hit of 5,000 people have viewed it. So a lot can be done by people with a plan, and we have an opportunity to bring in. Just see that all of us are at different places. We could come and then spend hours, and then we can share our views, and people can listen, and this is recorded and it is put back, which is almost impossible to think because there was no plan. So COVID will throw some challenges, and if you use it in a proper way, not only the economy will be revived, the way in which we do our business, whether it is in education or research. I don't want to take many examples in the education and research. There can be several examples which can be positive. I completely agree with Dr. Sharma's point that what will happen when we have a meeting like this, what is the response of a student or another committee member when we want to take a decision, because we want to recruit faculty members, we want to take major decisions in a board meeting. So there are quite a few challenges, but we have to live with it. And this is a great time. And I'm sure that this data science, artificial intelligence, image processing, text mining is going to play a very important role across the various disciplines, and definitely in chemistry and allied areas. So
thank you, Dr. Shastri. I think I know we've got. I know we've run a lot of beyond our stipulated time, but I think I'll have another last. If the panelists agree, I will extend it for another 5 to 10 minutes, if that's fine with all of you. And I will. We have some comments from some questions from the audience as well. But before that, I would like Kamesh raised his hand. He would like to say something.
No, yes, absolutely. In fact, I was delighted to hear Professor Sugata mentioning about you don't become chemist unless you smell ammonia. I think it reminds me of our back college days that unless you dirty your hand in the lab, the experience and the confidence doesn't come up. And Rebecca, to your point, I think you brought a very fundamental point that focus on science and research cannot be undermined. I think that becomes the bedrock for innovative society as we move forward. I think the added element to what Professor Umapati also mentioned is the focus on translational research if is brought on to the table, where all the researchers starts looking at the use cases and fundamental challenges which human society faces or would face into future, probably would start balancing the fulcrum much more adequately, where people would have choices to take subject of their interests, go deeper into system, look at the industry, collaboration, government support, all coming together for a purpose and an impact. I think that will provide our students also an opportunity to engage with outside world and realistically relate with what work is happening. Now, limiting them to just publish is definitely important, but can those publications and those researchers be brought into commercial world very quickly? Probably will give a lot of satisfaction to young scientists whom I meet on a regular basis. It's a delight to see the kind of resources and kind of scientists we have around and researchers around the academic institute. The energy level is not low. The zeal to succeed is not low. I think the opportunity provided through the ecosystem would be the biggest enabler for them to take leap of faith forward.
Swagata, you would like to add something?
No, it's just that this appreciation of science and its ability to change things, I guess, has been an eye-opener in this pandemic. And what I believe is the dissemination of this knowledge, keeping it simple, giving instructions, advice that give us the truth, simple, easy to understand, and the implementation strategy should also be very clear, not very confusing if we want to reach out to the common people. And I guess at the end, science should dictate whatever it is, and all the opportunities that we have should lead us to a better tomorrow, whichever way we look at it.
Yeah, thank you. What I'll do is now I'll stop the discussion here, but I have some questions on the chat as well. Interestingly, there are a lot of queries on funding. How does it really impact in the short term and the long term from industry and academia? It could, Rebecca, you could take a call from the industry. Kamish, quickly, briefly say how does it in a long term and a short term as well.
Shall I go first?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, I mean, this is difficult, and I think this is another point that's been brought up by other panelists already. The impacts of this pandemic aren't just on health and well-being and sanity for me. It's also on economics, and most of our countries relate our investment in research and innovation, our public investment in research and innovation, to our gross domestic product. So if the economy, the amount of rupees in hand or pounds in hand to invest in research and innovation also shrinks unless there's a policy decision to stop that happening. Now, in the UK, we're at a difficult point or an uncertain point in our spending cycle. So we're at the point just now where the Prime Minister has asked every part of government to set out its budget for the next 5 years, and we will then hopefully receive money to spend over that time. Now, at the moment in the UK, we're lucky because science really is at the forefront of this Prime Minister's interests, and that does mean that we are feeling more confident than we might have been if we had somebody else at the helm. Yeah. Now, I think that talks a little bit about science and funding generally, but then I think we get back to those earlier points around, will the focus that comes from government really steer us towards specific, tightly focused COVID-related research areas, or can we be working successfully to make sure that we are talking about science in a much broader way? And I think that's what's key. We know that COVID is going to be more than a 2020 problem, but as Professor Dasgupta was saying earlier, it's not going to last forever, and we will have other challenges, and we need to make sure that our disciplines and our communities are ready to face those when they hit, that we've not all just become microbiologists or ventilator specialists. We need to be more than that.
Yeah, thank you. Kamish?
Yeah, in fact, this funding is a very fundamental question. And for me, I think before we attempt to even visualize what is going to be the future state, it's very important for us to understand the R&D funding text from an Indian standpoint. I think there is no debate and no doubt between the research and development fraternity that it plays an important role in defining the economic growth and prosperity of nation. A strong R&D infrastructure is proportional to national growth, innovation, and creativity. However, if you look at India's R&D spending, it is just about 0.85% of GDP, which is well below compared to other nations like US standing at close to 3%, Israel 3%, Cambodia 4%. So there's a strong need for enhancing the R&D spend from the current level under 1% to projected probably is 2.5% by government in next 10 years. And I think Atmanirbhar Bharat amplifies the need also. The good part here is the India R&D investment has tripled over last 10, 15 years, but in relation to GDP, it's still stuck at 0.85% out there. And disturbing, or I shouldn't use the word disturbing, but most difficult part here is that when you look at the spend in comparison to what government is spending or what private enterprise is spending or higher education and other sectors spend, India stands apart where a significant portion of R&D is spent by government. So it is as high as 52%, which goes from government into research. And private sector puts 44% and academia is 4%. Unlike US, if you look at, they are close to 11% and industry is around 70+% and academia is around 13%. You look at Germany, again, government is low, 15, 67%. So this issue of a spending where the private sector involvement is limited in India in comparison to the part of the world, and government is pushing this money aggressively, is matter of a concern for all of us as such. Now, when we break this down into the sectoral pieces, you will see that if you look at global averages, I think global and pharma industry is the biggest industry where the R&D goes. The average spend is around 15% of it. But when you look at software and computer services, probably it's around 10% spend out there. India is lagging with 7 to 10% in pharma and probably 1 to 5% or 7% in Now, this is where I think in post-COVID or in normal scenario, it's a very, very important element where government of India, which is already executing several initiatives to enhance innovation in R&D, putting a lot of money behind target projects, university needs, and expediting the IP right processing and strengthening the CSIR labs, DRDO labs. But I feel strongly a favorable policy which can promote lab R&D very much encourage private sector. I think this is primarily because of implementation where we need agency industry, which in turn can work closely with academia and government labs and take those innovations and research into market for commercialization. I think the distinct arrangement of research being commercialized would be a defining. So collaborative effort will help industry also get the right workforce, work very closely with academia, industry, and labs, make sure that the effort will. And it's no doubt that current pandemic is putting pressure on available cash. And I personally feel the available resources and critical priorities of the businesses will take precedence over any other, so to say, exploratory research in a non-essential area, for example. But I think collectively, if government, industry, academia works closely, this issue can be tackled very effectively. Thank you, Rajesh.
Yeah. Last. As
we can't hear you, Rajesh.
We didn't hear you.
No, your phone is muted, Rajesh.
You have to mute.
Rajesh, your phone is muted.
Yeah. No, so sorry, with the mute business. No, I'll take a last question. I know it's the last 5 minutes left. I think there was quite a few questions on publication in terms of, Ajit, can you say there are a lot of concern? Do you see drop in publications because of the COVID in the coming days, or how do you see publishing evolve?
Absolutely. So brilliant question. I think this is something that we must have a look at from the regional perspective as well as the global perspective on what's happening. So the onset of the pandemic did create an impact in the overall research. So if you look at the total research which was in progress while the pandemic lockdowns came into effect across the globe, the papers which were in progress continued to kind of ramp up and the graph kept growing. But as we are approaching the fag end of the lockdown, and there is a limited number of researchers who, like Dr. Saugata highlighted, their access to lab is curtailed. All of you seeing that, the real research is not happening. Whatever is happening is either you're reviewing the articles or you're basically kind of make do with your available time. You're probably writing a book or something like that. So this does not in any way mean that the research articles will go down. It definitely means that there is a small break. And like Dr. Umapati had said, this is a small gap. This is a small gap. Please continue to work as usual. Please focus on your core research. Speak to your guides, speak to your advisors, and keep the pressure on, because this problem is not going to last forever. As soon as you're going to be back in labs, we are fully functional. So if you want to know, as publisher, as a society, are we ready? Yes, we are. We were always all the full staff. So we never stopped even for a day. Our journals are on time every time. So there'll be no hassle from that perspective. But yes, we need to now, as we are approaching the end of the yes, sir.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that, there is a concern among young faculties, young professors about quality of and quantity of output that they're supposed to maintain for their own survival. I mean, if you're on tenure, if you're an young assistant professor, which is a genuine concern. But I tell them that don't worry, you're not alone. The whole world is with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's just not India. It's that the whole world is going through the same kind of problems. And we have already invited, for example, the final year PhD students into the campus. And we're getting a second batch starting from September. So, so this is a 5-6 months gap. Assume that you were on a sabbatical in an island that you could not communicate with anybody. And so, looking at it positively, I think everyone will have a 6 months gap. So there will be no loss of a face or reputation in any sense, because everybody will be in the same boat. So nothing to worry about.
Yeah. No, I think I would like to bring this discussion to a close. I think there are quite a few, we can go on debating a lot of things here. There are quite a few questions. I had quite a few things which I wanted to speak, but I think we have run out of time. What I would like to really thank all the panelists sharing their time. I think it's a lot of time for discussing on these interesting topics. I think there are lots of interesting points I've come across. One good thing is what I look at as the most positive side is we're going to ride this storm as we are all talking about. And one of the things what we are also saying is this is over we would be able to come you've illustrated how do we overcome some of the challenges and other things, but what really heartening is there are a lot of opportunities for us in terms of going forward, and a new way of doing things will be emerging in terms of doing research, education, as well as Umapati said, it's over short term, or like even Kamesh talked about, after every great challenge, there is a kind of the world makes a rebound, and I think we will be doing that one as well after post-COVID. I think thanks for your participation, and I would also like to thank CSIR for giving us the platform to really have this discussion on an important topic. I know there will be a lot more discussions on this one on a different area, different platforms. I think, but this is a very interesting topic to have a debate as well and discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Over back to Arup.
Thank you all. So from my side, thank you for participating and taking out your time and discussion. We thank all of you on behalf of the CSIR SRTP team. Thank you all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.